The first thing you hear is the crunch of heavy boots on gravel right there at the end of my drive, and if you think I'm exaggerating, ask anybody who's ever had a run-in with an HOA president. Those folks make more noise than a dozen woodpeckers in mating season. The morning I'm talking about, I hadn't even finished my coffee before the invasion started. 4 big guys in black polos, all standing shoulder to shoulder at the old wrought iron gate. And behind them, in a red suit so bright you'd think she was lost on her way to a clown convention, was Karen Vance herself, yelling something about property violations. I sat there on my porch, hands wrapped around my mug, heart pounding, not from fear, but because I knew this was it. The day when the peace my father built here was going to be tested. Now let me back up a sec. Just before the storm broke, the world was picture perfect. Like something out of a Norman Rockwell painting. That lake mirror still blue as a robin's egg. The air was cool, the smell of black coffee rising like an offering. This land wasn't just a getaway. It was where I went to remember my dad. He'd only been gone 6 months, and the silence he left behind. Man, some days it felt heavier than a sack of concrete. I came out here not to hide, but to listen for him. His laugh in the wind, his wisdom in those old oaks lining the ridge. He taught me how to read this land, its history, its spirit, right down to the ink on the deeds tucked in the back of the cabin. Riley land since my great-granddad bought it with hands hard from farming back in the 20s. The deed written in that elegant old-time script predates any of the Sunset Vista suburbia that later crept over the hills with their cookie-cutter houses and those plastic mailboxes. Our property line was a hard stop. That lake in front of me, the one Karen was now claiming belonged to her HOA, had been Riley land for 4 generations, fed by a spring older than any of us. I could feel it in my bones after Dad passed. The vultures would start circling. So I got proactive. Dug out that old metal box in his office, the one full of faded photos and letters, and inside was the original '58 survey map. I brought it to the county clerk, had them notarize a certified copy, complete with the fancy gold seal. That map wasn't just history, it was my ace in the hole. So when Karen and her goon squad rolled up, I just sat there sipping coffee. I knew her name from the angry newsletters sometimes dumped in my mailbox. Her red suit cut the landscape like a warning flare. The guy leading her crew, Ron, gut straining his shirt, looked like he'd never intimidated anyone in his life. They tried to look tough hands on cheap nylon holsters, standing at attention like kids playing army in the yard. Karen pointed at my lake and started hollering, "That lake is common HOA property per our bylaws. You're trespassing and you need to vacate immediately." I didn't so much as flinch. Years of my dad's training kicked in: stay calm, let them talk, don't give them an inch. I watched her men fidget, trying to play the part. With my thumb, I hit record on my phone just in case. She took my silence as weakness. Typical mistake. She barked, "Did you hear me? Article 4, Section 2. HOA jurisdiction over all bodies of water. You're in violation and we're authorized to remove you by force and hit you with significant fines." She rattled off bylaws like she was reading the 10 Commandments, hoping I wouldn't know any better, but I'd already combed through every page of those rules. I knew what Article 4 was really about: mailbox colors and fencing, not lakes. I just let the silence hang. You know, that kind of quiet that makes people nervous? Karen hated it. Her voice got shriller, and Ron and his boys started looking like they wished they were anywhere else. She tried a scare tactic. Ron banged his baton against the gate metal on metal birds scattering from the trees. It was supposed to make me jump. Didn't work. Next, she pulled out a document, official, looking fresh from her home printer with the HOA letterhead all fancy. She waved it like a weapon. "This is a legally binding order, Mr. Riley. Trespassing, unauthorized use, $1,500 in fines as of this morning, increasing daily. If you don't leave, we'll have a lien on your property. I waited until she finished her performance, then, real calm, I said, "You're confident in your paperwork, Karen, but you made a mistake. Article 4 is about mailboxes and paint not lakes. The word lake isn't in your rules anywhere. I'd suggest you double-check before quoting the law." I showed her the CCNR document on my phone. You could see the color drain from her face, a look I'll never forget. Her bluff was shot down in flames. Ron's guys traded confused looks, and one of them, a kid with nervous hands, fumbled with his pistol and dropped the magazine on the gravel. It was like a scene out of a sitcom, the mighty enforcers undone by their own clumsiness. I grinned and said, "Maybe your folks should secure their equipment. And let Sterling Developments know if you're going to invent rules, pick an article number that's not already taken." That name Sterling Developments hit her hard. Her eyes widened. It was more than just an HOA turf war. She was the front for a land grab. I'd stumbled onto something big, and she knew it. That's when things really turned. Just as she started to unravel the cabin door behind me, creaked open, my cousins Jake and Mark, both ex-Marines, came out looking calm and dangerous, as ever. Jake just smiled. "Having a party out here?" Jack didn't tell us we'd be hosting. The balance shifted now. It was 5 against 3, but 2 of us had real military backbone. Karen got desperate. She whipped out her phone and dialed Sheriff Thompson, a buddy of hers, painting herself as a damsel under siege. "Sheriff, it's Karen Vance. Trespassers getting belligerent, aggressive associates. I need backup." Sheriff showed up, big man, tan uniform, thick mustache, all the airs of old-school authority. But the minute he called her Carolyn and smiled like they were sharing coffee cake at the church social, I knew I was sunk. She spun her story, how I was threatening how her rules were being trampled. He listened, nodded, and turned to me with that parental, now son voice. I laid out the facts, my deed, my certified map, her lies, but he just shrugged. Said it was a civil matter, and that for the sake of peace I should cooperate and let her assess my property. No court order, no law on his side, just the weight of his badge propping up her scheme. I wanted to blow up, but that's exactly what they were hoping for, to call me belligerent, to justify an arrest. Instead, I kept my cool. "Sheriff, with respect, you're asking me to let a private citizen trespass under the color of law. You can't do that without a court order." He just glared, then warned, "If I get called out again, I won't be so patient." Then he left dust in the air, and Karen with her crew stood taller, thinking she'd won. Her thugs blocked my drive with their trucks boxing us in. Then, for good measure, she grabbed a bullhorn and started reading off HOA violations. My furniture, my truck, the weeds by the porch. Never mind, my place wasn't in her jurisdiction. She was performing for an audience. And boy, did the neighbors watch. Phones came out, curtains twitched, folks stepped onto their decks. But she didn't care. Power was a drug, and she was flying high. That's when old Mr. Miller, retired lawyer from 3 cabins down, wandered up, fishing hat on, golden retriever at his side. "Calm as you please," he cut her off. "Ma'am, you're detaining Mr. Riley on private property." "That's a misdemeanor. I'm on the phone with the county prosecutor now. Want to give her your name?" Karen sputtered. Miller smiled. "You have no right to imprison him. This isn't your land." The woman's composure snapped. "I am the law," she screamed, veins bulging, spit flying, her meltdown caught on every phone in sight. That was the breaking point. I texted Danny, my cousin leader of the local Vets Motorcycle Club, a prearranged code. Within minutes, the rumble of Harleys echoed down the road. 12 riders, disciplined ex-military, rolled in like a cavalry charge surrounding Karen's blockade in a show of real, unflinching force. When Danny dismounted, scar on his brow, catching the sun, it was like a verdict had been delivered. The hired muscle lost their nerve one by one, they cracked, and the youngest Mike laid down his gear and surrendered. Ron, trying to play tough, panicked and fired a shot into the dirt. Nobody was hurt, but it killed what little fight they had left. Danny stepped up quiet, cold, and told them, "We fought for something. You're just scared of your own gunshot." The bikers fired up their engines in unison, a wall of sound that shook the ground and scattered Karen's army like scared rats. Trucks roared off dust flying, leaving her standing there alone, her mask of authority gone. I stepped off the porch, looked her in the eye, and said, "Looks like your army went bankrupt, Carolyn." The crowd of neighbors watched, phones still rolling. She hissed, "You'll regret this, Riley. My lawyers will bury you." The club mounted up and wrote out no words, just thunder. The next week I waited, and sure enough a letter from a fancy law firm came, $4, $750 fine for noise pollution from the Harleys. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my coffee. Framed that notice, hung it right next to a picture of Dad with his best catch, a badge of honor for surviving the first battle. That night by the fire with Jake, Mark, Danny, and Mr. Miller, we sipped Dad's old whiskey and planned our next move. Miller warned, "Sterling will drown you in paper, Jack. This is a war of attrition." Danny nodded. "We need intel." That's when Mike, the young guard, showed up pale and scared with a USB drive full of emails and documents. Proof of the conspiracy between Karen Sterling Developments, the HOA, the county officials, all of it. Plans to harass every legacy family into selling to steal our land one parcel at a time. I called the other families, Henderson, Peterson, the Clarks. We met, shared the files, realized we were all targets. For the first time we felt hope. We formed an alliance, pooled money, prepared for war. When the process server delivered Sterling's lawsuit, 200 pages thick, trying to steal our deeds using an old, never-approved zoning map, it was a declaration of total war. They wanted a judge to kick us off our own land, to bleed us dry. But this fight wasn't just about us anymore. It was about every family who ever stood up to a bully with money, about justice, about legacy. I looked at Danny, at Miller, at the stack of legal threats. "They want a war," I said, voice steady. "They'll get one." Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just one person standing their ground. Sometimes it's a whole community finding its courage. If you're watching, if you've ever faced down a bully or a corrupt system, drop a word in the comments. Tell me what justice means to you. And share this story if you believe, like I do, that truth and solidarity can turn the tide even against the worst storm.